And people always ask, as a religious, what's your vocation story? And I always start with my parents, because I say, I saw in them a desire, like a fullness of marriage. And so that's what I was seeking as I discerned my vocation. It was really in meeting my community and interacting and doing different things with them that I discovered for the first time that potential of the same love and fullness and fulfillment that I saw in my parents' marriage. And so they gave me the standard of a fullness of vocation.
Wow.
That I discovered in my religious call with my community, my particular community.
Hey, we're back. That's right, we have another great interview from the Marriage Catechumenate Summit in Houston, Texas. Today we're talking to Sister John Mary, a Franciscan sister of the Eucharist, based in Vancouver, BC, Canada. She talks about the importance of the centrality of the Eucharist in marriage and family life, and talks about how the witness of her parents' marriage helped her to recognize her own vocation. We're still working on the documentary and it's coming soon, but in the meantime, we hope you enjoy this bonus interview. Roll intro. We know the Eucharist is the center of it should be the center of everything in our life.
Amen.
But what are the challenges, or what are some of the realities around that when it comes to like the family or when it comes to marriage?
Yeah, we can just start off with how welcoming a community is to a family, and especially families with young children. We do often hear from families that they worry about going to Mass because children are going to be allowed. So how welcoming is a community? And you see parishes that really thrive in that area, that welcome and then allow families just to be present, because it is so important and such an essential part of any vocation, the life of the church, the life of families. So absolutely. And then I think just finding little ways to nurture a devotion to our Blessed Sacrament, to the Eucharist. And you'll see it. I come from a large family, so I can see it in the life of my brothers and sisters and their families, little things. And it may just be going to the church outside of Mass for 5 minutes, or something as simple as I see some of my siblings when they pass the church, they do the sign of the cross out of reverence for the Eucharistic presence. And that sticks with children. Yeah. They see that and they recognize that.
Like if you go to adoration, you can tell like when there's young kids there that they go a lot because they're not super fidgety necessarily. Like they might get up and move around occasionally, but they understand that this is like a part of what they're doing, and they're not like, Mom, can we leave? Mom, can we leave? Like exactly. Like every 5 seconds, like they're just like, well, we're here, and this is the time that we spend here.
That's right. And to be sensitive to stages of life. There's times where that works very well for families. There's other stages of life where things are so hectic that they might not have the time or ability to do it, but they still, maybe at home, still find little ways of devotions and stuff that they can foster that. So it's almost like each family has to discern for themselves where they are, and how do we help them just feel comfortable where they are, and how to nurture that according to their situation.
And that seems to be the challenge kind of behind everything here at the Summit of, you can't just make up a thing and then be like, we're going to apply this wholesale across the continent. And it needs to be particular to a particular diocese, to a particular parish, to a particular family. And so that's what you guys are trying to figure out. So tell me a little bit about what your small group is doing, what you guys are talking about.
Yes, sure. Well, I think we're getting to the point where we recognize maybe the stage we're most drawn to is the accompaniment stage, because we see it as almost like the linchpin connecting, where we could start working with these young couples that are coming out of marriage formation and their wedding day. That accompaniment, which then goes back to the particular, because it's in knowing the individual couple that you know how to accompany them towards their particular way of living out their vocation of marriage. And so it really is a one-by-one. And I think that's why I really love Witness to Love, the program, because it allows for an authentic, real relationship that builds trust, that allows you then to journey with these young couples moving into their married life, and then having someone there to accompany them through the peaks and valleys of marriage, which they'll all face some moments of struggle, but to have someone there with them is huge and needed.
I like what you said about kind of that idea of vocation in marriage. When we talk about vocation, especially like in college, like you're like, oh, vocation, you're just like, are you going to be a priest? Are you going to be a sister? Are you going to be like, religious life? And in college, I didn't even comprehend the idea that marriage was a vocation.
Yeah, it's similar to being a priest or religious that has a particular outreach or ministry that they do. So I'm a marriage and family therapist, but my primary vocation is a religious sister. And same with husband-wife, their primary vocation as husband-wife, and then potentially mother-father. But that's also, I think, an important thing to emphasize is actually, even within the family, to recognize the priority of the marriage as the vocation, because that's the foundation for the family. And so it's very easy, and we talk about this a lot with our couples, that they lose sight of that primary relationship of husband and wife, and not get overly caught up as mother and father. And the best way they can be mother and father is to show a really healthy relationship to their children as husband and wife, setting that foundational and understanding for their children of where they are called to be. But as a church, we have to do a better job at promoting an understanding of marriage as vocation. And so when we have, Vocation Sunday, that we're praying for healthy sacramental marriages, because sometimes people will say, oh, we have a crisis, a lack of priests and religious callings or vocations. But I would say as a society, we have the problem isn't only in this area. I would say we have a lack of people's awareness that marriage is a vocation and even a desire for the sacrament of marriage. More and more. We know more and more people who are just choosing either not to marry at all or not to marry in the church.
Absolutely.
And so we need to address that first before we even think of the other vocations.
It seems like with every conversation you've been having, like they're like, this is the thing that we can focus on, and everything kind of like pinwheels out into there's all these other things that we kind of need to address at the same time.
Absolutely.
Because it's all so much, it's all so connected,
so
and interconnected.
And that is so true. I know from my own situation in growing up, so I'm one of 10 children, and people always ask, as a religious, what's your vocation story? And I always start with my parents, because I say, I saw in them a desire, like a fullness of marriage. They had a deep love for each other, strong faith, a lot of joy, and fulfillment. And so that's what I was seeking as I discerned my vocation.
Interesting.
And then it was really in meeting my community and interacting and doing different things with them that I discovered for the first time that potential of the same love and fullness and fulfillment that I saw in my parents' marriage. And so they gave me the standard of a fullness of vocation that I discovered in my religious call with my community, my particular community.
That's wonderful, and that's wild to think about, because it seems like it'd be hard to like transmute that onto something else or into see it in a different thing, because it's so focused on a certain kind of relationship.
That's right.
But to have that, be able to know that it bridges that. Absolutely.
And it's nothing they said. They were wonderfully open to whatever God was calling us to. But they lived it profoundly. So when you see it and then you experience it in a unique way, in a different way, you do have to grapple with that a little bit. But it was just so innate. It was like, this is it. This is what I know is the fullness that I'm being called to. And the fullness of what it means to be woman, what it means to be wife and spouse and mother, but in this unique call. But the standard was set by my parents for sure.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
Well, the last thing I want to ask you is, what are your hopes for what comes out of this summit? Where do you want to, like, what do you want to walk away with, and how do you want to see this transform the people that you're called to serve, people in your community?
Sure. I think, first of all, just being together, there's a whole level in which the Holy Spirit moves when people come together with a common mission and a desire to serve our God and his people. So just being together is huge, and the network that it creates. But then I do think very concrete, practical steps to apply sort of the different stages that we're being asked to look at, to look at our formation process of marriage. I work at an archdiocesan level, and so we work with all of our parishes. So if we can come back with some really concrete steps towards forming the whole process and really linking the whole journey, the pathways together, I think we'll benefit from that. And I already, in the few meetings we've had in a small group, I can start to see very concretely what we can do to make sure we're hitting each step and stage of that pathway.
Well, thank you so much for taking the time to talk with us today.
Absolutely.
We wish you the best in this summit,
Thank you.
as you go out and serve your community some more.
Thank you very much.